Okay, hello everyone. Welcome again to the Plan 7121 tutorial. As you may know, this is the cohort for the postgrads. And today we're going to discuss the topic that you learned last week. First of all, of course, as you can see, the topic is the practice of community participation in planning, week 3 topic. And first of all, do you have any questions regarding the material that you've been reading, the assignments, or the peer learning groups? No questions? Yeah?
I have a question about my group work. I have company, and is it almost like that we choose randomly if we didn't have a group, right?
Yeah, you can see in the Blackboard, like if you check your Blackboard now, it should be available now. There's like a box on the right side where it says My Communities. Is everyone familiar with it? Yeah? Okay. So it's on when you get, it's not on My Communities part. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, just check your Blackboard site and you'll be able to find it. If you don't find it, just see me at the end of the tutorial. We can work it out. About the peer learning groups, yes?
About the article, what is the difference between the social and community planning?
Yeah, that will be part of the tutorial. Just in a few minutes, I will answer your question. Any other questions? The submission is like in 2 weeks from now. The submission of the first assignment. Is everyone okay with their groups? Everyone has a group? You don't. Just check your Blackboard because you will be allocated in one group. If you check your Blackboard and you don't see your name, please come to me and we will fix it out, okay? Okay. So one of the questions that was like raised up from the readings that you had for this week is the difference between town planning, social planning, and community planning, and the interaction between these three areas. Actually, you can, I don't know, you saw this diagram in the readings. It's a bit blurry from the beginning. If you read it and you don't understand it, it's quite normal. For me, it was a bit difficult at the beginning as well. Town planning, as you may see from this graphic, is a little bit more hierarchical and objective, and it's a bit more overlaps with social planning. So social planning is kind of in the middle between town planning and community. And the main difference between social planning and community planning is that community planning is a little bit more inclusive in terms of community participation and in the whole planning process. I'm sure Paul will be able to explain this with a little more of detail, but I just wanted to give you a quick diagram about these readings that you had for you to know for the lecture that will come at 5 p.m. So community planning will be more based on subjective knowledge and more anarchical power, so it will be more contentious politics rather than the conventional politics of the town planning and part of the social planning, as you might have read it in the article. And is there any questions after seeing this specific diagram that you will have about that reading? Is it a little bit more clear for you, or is it still a bit blurry? Okay, so I assume that it's clear. Okay.
And what's the relationship with the neoliberal ideology, something like this? I can't understand this part of the article, because the main idea of the article is find the similarities and differences
Mm-hmm.
Then, given the constraints imposed by neoliberalism ideology.
The neoliberalist ideology is the world that we live in, is the capitalism that most of the countries are facing. So the whole reading was based on the analysis of these three areas and how will it work in a capitalist background. Yeah. Okay. Any other question? Okay, great. So, as you may know, these tutorials are not only to talk about the assignments and the questions that you will have regarding the admin stuff of the course, but also for discussing the specific issues that we are learning in the course. So, does anyone saw something in the media, any article in the newspaper that you would like to share with us that will have to do with community and social planning? Yes?
I think we can discuss about the news that Book posted in the Facebook about the, how can I say, the introduction of the social media in this kind of participation.
Yeah.
I think the news talk about there are some advantages and some disadvantages. But I think if you, how can I say, if you have a person that can control, I think it's a very good how can I say type of communication, because nowadays all people use social media, and it's maybe easier to give your opinion rather
Mm-hmm.
than go to a specific location or something like this. And also, some people are very shy to talk in front of other people, and I think that is a good way for participation.
Mm-hmm. Is everyone familiar with that post in the Facebook group about the role of social media in community participation? Or does anyone have any opinion on that? Yeah?
I think about social media that we should consider the show with the relevance is writing in the special perspective, because some writers they write it with their perspective, so it's not maybe not the truth, so we should consider it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a really interesting point that you both were saying, that sometimes the access to social media is very immediate and everyone have access to it, so that will shape the whole participation and the level of participation of different communities. So it's really important to take into account that fact that we are living at the moment, that the social media is influencing a lot, not only like decisions, but also formal and like official decisions around our environment. Yeah.
It is a bit of a minefield with social media, because you've got people forming a whole opinion on, say, like anti-vaxxers, for example, within the last setting. So they're forming an entire opinion around vaccinating children based on a 4-word meme that has no grounding whatsoever. So when we're reaching out to these people in our community who are active on social media, it's not necessarily the brightest or the most informed sector of our community. So it's a huge problem, because people I know that aren't on social media, who don't have a Facebook account, are probably the realest sort of, they're just good people, they don't have any dramas in life, they're educated people. So I think you have to sort of be careful which sectors you're missing out on when you do something through social media. And also, like, bringing up the gay marriage plebiscite, why are they doing that through mail as opposed to social media, if social media is actually their grounds
Yeah, that was actually one of the topics that I was bringing up today, the plebiscite. Is everyone familiar with the process? Okay, just for you to know, the plebiscite is a governmental process. The governments have two processes, referendum and plebiscite, to get people's opinion on specific issues regarding planning on a governmental level. So at this point, the government the Prime Minister is proposing a plebiscite to approve same-sex marriage in Australia. Yeah, are you familiar with this topic? Yeah? Okay, great. So the discussion that Kate was bringing up is very interesting because we have to analyze the costs of a certain type of community participation, such as a plebiscite, and also the benefits of having a different approach, for example, using social media. But you have to take into account also that not everyone has access to social media, so not everyone will have the same right to vote on a national topic, such as same-sex marriage. So it's very important to realize how social media is quite important probably in all of our lives at the moment. It's a way of participating in different topics. It's also a way of planning for communities, but not always is the most legitimate way. So if you think about this, if you think that the two elements of participation are legitimacy and efficiency, how can you address legitimacy on a plebiscite process or efficiency? Is it efficient? Is it more legitimate than efficient? Probably yes, because you will see that everyone will have access and everyone will have the same right to vote on a specific issue. But it's not as efficient because of the costs. It's very expensive. As you may see in different newspapers, they have been discussing the costs of such plebiscite, which will be around 150 million Australian dollars, if I'm not wrong. But if you have different approaches, such as using social media, maybe it's more efficient, but you have to think about how legitimate will be that process if you use other types of participation. Yes?
And also another point is for this upcoming plebiscite, it's non-binding, so which means like people, if they feel like they want to vote, they'll vote. It's pretty much a vote, so it's a plebiscite in a case does not affect the constitution, so if people feel like they want to, they will do it, and only the ones that have access to it. So again, they were talking earlier on about the use of social media. There is a discrepancy in those that have access to it and those that don't. So, and yeah, that comes to the fact that when you do target your audience, you've got to look at how and who you're targeting and how well they will receive, how well they can participate in the process.
And what's your opinion about the non-binding fact of the plebiscite?
Well, I feel like the representatives, they put them in there in the first place, so that is sort of, we voted them in, so they should be actually doing it for us instead of wasting 120 million, which could have gone to other.
Didn't we do this like 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Right. So what are they possibly going to gain?
Yeah, that's the other part of the discussion, that basically few months or years ago, the Australian population already said that the majority was in favor of the same-sex marriage. So that kind of discussions are the discussions that we want to raise in different spaces. For example, like here, this is not a topic that will touch everyone in the classroom, but it's a way of analyzing how effective and how legitimate is community participation in our daily lives. yeah, as you were saying, probably if it's non-binding and also it's very expensive, then we have to analyze if it's cost effective. But also it's really important to take into account that a plebiscite process will will increase the legitimacy of the whole same-sex marriage discussion, because you are including every part of the community. You're including the conservatives as well, which are the part of the community that are against the same-sex marriage, and that's very important in a democratic process, in a country that is democratic and it's trying to plan and legislate on a democracy level. So it's very important to take into account that sometimes the costs are really, really high, but you will have a legitimate process, and at the end, the outcome will be probably more accepted by the community.
My only problem with the current thing, because I've been reading a lot about in the media, is that certain sort of senior bureaucrats in the current the coalition government saying, if this plebiscite has to go through, they will keep doing it again. Like, if it's sort of a no, and that's just going to be another waste of money. So it's a personal thing. But
yeah.
Again, the 120 million could be put to better use elsewhere.
Not only that, so we've got all this money being wasted on another photograph, which I'm still not and then there's all these community groups who think they're rising up against something, which really they're not. They're just wasting community dollars that could be going to other things as well. Like, it's just a huge waste of resources. So, and not everybody has access to
Yeah, it's a very difficult topic and a very sensitive discussion. Does anyone has another opinion on this specific issue of the plebiscite in Australia? Do you guys want to add something? No? I mean, yeah, I'm trying to be really non-partial in these issues. I think that these kind of opportunities from a government level, you have to analyze it from every single perspective, see how could you make it more legitimate or how could you make it more efficient, and try to look for them. Yeah, from like the mid grounds or like cost-effective analysis, how will you achieve legitimacy and efficiency from both sides? In these cases, I think it's a bit difficult, as you were saying. It's also difficult because a few years ago there was, the Australian community already knows that this is a topic that is that everyone is in favor of. Not everyone, but majority of the Australians are in favor of. But it's, yeah.
I guess the point to make about that, social media again, because they're getting them from the polls. Mm-hmm. The results are from the polls, and we're not sure if it's representative of the entire Australian. Sorry, it's just, that's how I see it. Like, the polls are saying everyone is in favor of, but which cohort are we looking at that's actually saying yes to it, and which ones are not even like voting, like doing those online polls. So I'm not sure how they got there, but again, it goes back to the social media being used to sort of try to drive an agenda.
Yeah, that's a very important point that you're saying. It's really important to see who is getting the information to vote for or against a decision. What are the target groups, and if all groups are included in a specific procedure. So sometimes using social media, you will get part of the community, you will have a certain type of community planning, but on the specific case of using online resources. In most cases, you will be missing part of your community, so you have to take into account what are the methods that you're using to get a decision, to get public opinion on certain decision on a government level, to make it more legitimate. Because you have to also think about the long-term outcome of these kind of processes. What will happen in 10, 20 years from now if a process like this one does not include everyone in the community? Anyone has another opinion? Something to add for the discussion? Okay, so after having the discussion, the idea of these tutorials is to have a small activity in groups. So this week, we are gonna, as you may remember, last week we talked about the others and how can we include the others and let them participate, and how can we identify who is the other. So I will ask you to divide in 5 groups. Well, no, I think it's going to be difficult. Maybe, yeah. If you guys can join in one group, yeah. And yeah, so kind of have 4 or 5 in each table, so we can divide the different cases. The first one, I'm just going to give you a quick introduction about the cases, and then you will tell me which one is of your interest, and then I will divide you in groups. So the first one is an informal community in India, and how will that community be included in a slum redevelopment program? Who wants to do that? Okay. Second group, homeless people in Melbourne, and how is that influencing public safety in the city? Third one, young people. There's no specific place or city, but how these young people will use a commercial space in a specific urban environment. The fourth case is people with physical disabilities and their access to public transport. And the fifth one is the low-income community and how can they react to vandalism in parks. So, which group is keen to do the first topic? I need 1 or 2. Otherwise, I will just... Okay, first one. So, I will assign then. You do the first one, and you guys do the first one. You do the second. So, if you guys can join in a group, that would be perfect. You guys the second topic, and the table after that second as well. Then if you 2 girls can join this group, maybe, that would be great. So you will be doing young people, same as you. And these 2 groups will be doing people with physical disabilities, and those 2 tables, if you can join either of those groups, will be great. The last one, low-income communities. So what I will ask you to do is just remember the IIP2 spectrum. So you have to evaluate the IIP2 spectrum and propose the 2 most relevant levels that you will think apply for your specific case. You need to justify why. Why should you use this level of involvement, and why should you involve that group in the specific case? The consideration of involving that groups, and 2 or 3 ideas of engagement. How will you engage this specific group considered as the others in a participatory approach? So I can give you 10 minutes for you to discuss that in groups, and then at the end we will just, you can just give me your ideas and present it by groups, if it's okay with you. Okay, guys, just start wrapping up your conversations. In about 2 minutes, we will start presenting the cases of each one of the groups, okay? Okay, guys, who is the group that wants to go first and tell us about your conclusions of this activity? Oh, everyone is so keen. Yeah, if you guys want to start, that's good, perfect.
So our group has a low-income community with vandalism in parks. So we had a few justification for involving. The group we're involving would be the ones who actually did the vandalism. So what we focus more on is on graffiti. Yeah. What are the questions? Oh, that's fine. So the justification is that they are the ones who are destroying the community or destroying the public goods or even the environment. And the ideas we have is one way is to sort of legalize graffiti. So maybe creating a wall or giving spaces for them to create their artwork so that it makes it more. There would be regulations that regulate them to what they should draw on the walls, and even if they don't want it, or sometimes after a month or so, they can be erased and they can draw on it again. So this is sort of like a collaboration with the council and the people who are involved. The second way we were thinking was creating community teams. So those people who did vandalism or any kind of people can actually create like a soccer team to get involved in the community and have a different sort of interest for them to join other things other than damaging the areas. The third one is a potential way to create a tourism spot in the community. It's sort of a relation to the first idea, which when they create graffiti artworks, it can be really beautiful and it can make them into a tourist spot where people can go and visit. So it's sort of empowering the community to create the artworks, helping them to create more job opportunities too. Is that all? Yeah.
That's great. Thank you very much for being the first group volunteering, for telling us your conclusions. Is there anyone else that wants to share your ideas with the rest of the group? Come on, guys. It's a participatory course. Yes, great.
Our topic is about young people using for commercial space. We have two spectrum. So the first one is collaborate with young people and work with them. It can work with them like volunteers, for example, raise awareness or send message to this community, utilize and grow young people. It's a good idea. And the other is involved in design of the commercial space. It's important to consider some space for entertainment or workshops such as art or music. So this is 2 points. And it's important to involve this group because young people make up the community and also sense of belonging. So we think it's important to consider this group. The consideration, we have to listen the idea of this group can be important for the community. And also this kind of involved and collaboration can avoid for them bad behaviors such as vandalism or something like that. So I think it's important to involve the young people in this kind of activity. Yeah.
Do you have any some ideas like a specific engagement? How will you involve them? Which kind of groups will you form? How will you make them participate and make them aware of the use of that public space, commercial space?
We didn't discuss this, but maybe, for example, in the send message to the community, we can use young people for explain or participate in some activities such as maybe the music event or something like that can be useful for this kind of engagement.
Also, is anyone else keen on sharing your ideas?
Okay.
Our group is talking about the role of young people in commercial place. So in this discussion, we allow the participation of young people to collaborate and involve in commercial place design. It's about in terms of spectrum of public participation, we focus on involve and collaborate. So we gather the preference on the young people on how to design the right commercial place, and why the involvement of the young people is important because the young people, I think, they can spend a lot in the commercial place and give the economical benefit to the place, and it can give the benefit to the business owners, and then the consideration in if we compare to the other older generations, the young people have lively ambience, and it can attract more people to come to the commercial place. And the ideas of engagements, we think about the first one is about the social media, because the young people have the great attractiveness in social media, and the second one is about the campaigns, but we make the campaigns in the creative ways, so we can gather a lot of people and educate them why the commercial place is important for them. And then maybe we try other media such as television or radio. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the groups that wanted to participate. Is there anyone else that want to share any other idea just before we finish? Yes?
We had the homeless in Melbourne. So the homeless was a difficult one because it's such a diverse group. You've got people who are drug users, who have always been drug users and just can't seem to get on their feet. But then there's also those people who are good people. They have families and they've just lost their business, or something's not going right for them. Another problem is they have minimal resources, so zero access to social media usually. And so we decided to consult and involve, being quite light levels of engagement, basically because it all has to be face to face. You have to reach out to them, and then we also wanted to involve government organisations and churches to look at things like early intervention and incorporate some international strategy. For example, in Singapore, you don't see the homeless, so they must be doing something over there that's effective that we could maybe look at here. And yeah, the problem was the safety, by the way, because there was a massive protest and the protesters got violent, not the homeless.
Thank you. Just to finish, I have a quick question for you. As you were all saying, you had different levels of engagement based on the IIP2 spectrum, but what I could see is that none of you were mentioning empowering the people to, as a way of engagement.
We have an example of the problem here.
Yes? Why did you not choose it at the end?
No, but people will to share. Yeah, the idea was that, for example, our example is commercial space. So if we consider it as shopping mall, okay, as the example as shopping mall, there are sometimes free space at the shopping mall, and those free spaces can be utilized in order to engage the young people who have the small and medium enterprises. So they are like entrepreneurs. So in order to push them, in order to show their products, for example, or to show their ability of their new companies which have been organized or created, to give them few spaces in those shopping malls and to say to them, please come and to show your products. This kind of small and medium enterprises support for them. So this is this kind of empowering.
Okay, yeah. Yes?
We did talk about, you sort of touched on the empowerment bit, but we thought in the people, like the cohort that we're looking at, at this stage, like the first and foremost is to look at the needs, which is like, food, water, shelter. And for them, that's paramount prior to looking at empowering them, which will become later, sort of get them into sort of like an accommodation first, and then you can start looking at other sort of activities to empower them. But at the moment, it's focusing on their well-being as well for them as well as the public that sort of
Yeah.
to walk around.
Yeah, definitely. That's very important for you to take into account when you are analyzing any kind of situation that you have probably in your professional lives. When you're asked to analyze some engagement process, as this group was saying, probably the target population that they are working with is more keen to be engaged, and they already have a specific educational level or specific conditions that will the engagement be more successful. While in the case of the group that was discussing the homeless people in Melbourne, maybe it's easier first to inform them about the specific approaches that you will have, and then start a process that you will get to the empowerment at some point. But you first have to start on a different level of engagement to make them aware of the situation or the specific projects that the city has for that specific type of group. Does anyone else want to share a final thought about involving the others, about the IIP2 spectrum, or about the discussion that we had at the beginning? Okay, great. So you're just free to have like a few minutes of break before Paul comes here to give you the main lecture. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah.
Yes, I just gave you a few minutes of break.
How did it go? I talked to some of the undergrads and they said they had the recording and I was going, oh, I like made them feel guilty for not being here last week. They heard me say better. Hi. Hello again.